If we are to enter into any joint venture or joint exploration activity with China, dapat ang unang requirement natin that China recognizes our arbitral win dahil ito yung premised on that. And para sa akin, a good neighbor and a real friend is really fair and follows international law. Para sa akin, dapat naiintindihan that might does not make right. It does not bully or take advantage. And any leader should have the courage to stand up for the dignity of our nation.
You heard presidential aspirant Vice President Leni Robredo. She says she's agreeable to a joint exploration with China in the Reed Bank, but if and only if Beijing recognizes the Philippines' arbitral win in The Hague.
Talking about foreign policy, Robredo says it will always be Filipino first, but she's not closing her doors on making constitutional amendments to allow the entry of more foreign investors. Good evening, I'm Gretchen Hall.
I'm Robbie Alampay. You're watching The Big Story. Aside from her stand on joint explorations with China in the West Philippine Sea, Vice President Leni Robredo is giving us a glimpse of what her administration's foreign policy will look like if elected president.
Here's the rest of the plans she bared during the Meet the Presidential's Economic Reform in the New Frontier Forum. Faith Del Mundo with The Big Story.
If elected president, the country's incumbent second leader says she's open to joint exploration activities with China in the Reed Bank, but that comes with conditions.
Now, if we are to enter into any joint venture or joint exploration activity with China, dapat ang unang requirement natin that China recognizes our arbitral win dahil ito yung premised on that. And para sa akin, a good neighbor and a real friend is really fair and follows international law.
Back in 2016, the Philippines won against China in the landmark ruling by The Hague, effectively invalidating Beijing's claim in the West Philippine Sea. But China continues to push back against the ruling, even increasing their presence in the contested waters. For Vice President Leni Robredo, the country's next leader should have the guts to stand up to the bullies.
And any leader should have the courage to stand up for the dignity of our nation. Ang pinuno ng bansa, dapat handa tayong ipaglaban yung ating karapatan. Hindi dapat tayo nakikipagkompromiso sa ating kasarinlan.
In the forum Meet the Presidential Economic Reforms in the New Frontier, Robredo made clear what her administration's foreign policy will be.
Ang atin ay atin. Our foreign policy will always put the interests of our country and our people first. We will have to address challenges always with courage and honor, and we should be unrestrained by fear and be free from the influence of any political power.
Having said that, the BP is open to allowing more foreign investments, even if it requires amending economic provisions of the 1987 Constitution. But this, she says, should come with transparency and participation of the people.
We ensure that the process is open, transparent, and people are given the opportunity to participate. Kasi might yun naman yung parating worry ng tao, that some of the other provisions not needing any amendments.
But even without the amendments, Robredo says foreign investments may still be boosted through a more responsible enactment of the Public Service Act, which would open up large-scale investments. For News 5, Faith Del Mundo, we are One News.
How does her foreign policy thinking sit with experts? Is this going to boost support for the Vice President? That big question and more with political analyst Professor Dindo Manhit. Professor Manhit, welcome to The Big Story.
Good evening, Robbie. Good evening, Gretchen.
So you heard her stand on the territorial dispute with China, particularly with joint exploration, but China, Beijing should first recognize our arbitral win. What do you think?
very critical, Robbie, to any discussion about territorial extraction of resources is that our arbitral victory has a basis of international law accepted by different countries that believe on a rule-based international system. So I support the stand of the Vice President and any candidate that values the importance of our arbitral.
Dindo, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Sorry. What I'd like to add more is the idea that we don't need joint exploration. What we need is countries to respect our territorial integrity and work on contracting out and exploring within the bounds of the Philippine Constitution, which is supported by our arbitral victory as accepted by international law.
Okay. Now, Vice President Robredo also said she does want, of course, more foreign investment. And to that point, she is open to revisions, amendments to the Constitution. What message does that send to which sector, and does it make her stand out in any way?
Very important as we face the challenges of a post-COVID recovery and even post-2022 election is the desire of majority of Filipinos, and we have seen it, that majority of Filipinos would like the next administration to create jobs. And to create jobs, you need not only to harness investments coming from domestic investors, but even foreign investors. And with foreign investors, especially foreign investors that can bring in technology, can bring in strengths that we don't have in the country, will not only create jobs, but create opportunities for business to grow, new industries to grow in our country. And that can address one of the challenges, or key challenges for ordinary voters, trabaho at kita. So we need really candidates to value the importance of investments in our country and the role that private sector play, be it domestic or foreign investor.
Yes, but to that point, Dindo, ulitin ko lang yung tanong ko. Her position on China, on joint exploration, and on foreign investments, including foreign investments as enabled by charter amendments, is that any different from what all the other presidential candidates are saying? Does it make her stand apart?
It can make her stand apart because really, we need to define candidates that are not candidates of China, that will protect the interests of China in the Philippines that we have seen this past 5.5 years. And we need really a candidate, if not her, but maybe other candidates, challenge other candidates to really create a path for opportunities, for jobs to grow in our country, be it foreign or local. So it might not define her differently, but at least she's defining herself now at this moment. And I'm challenging other candidates to do that.
Okay, Dindo, maraming salamat. That was political analyst Professor Dindo Manhit. The coup-led PDP Laban has officially endorsed Davao City Mayor Zara Duterte Carpio as its vice presidential candidate. The Duterte-backed faction believes the president's daughter has the credentials and track record needed for the second highest national position. Energy Secretary Alfonso Cusi says they are finalizing their alliance with Lakas CMD, which Mayor Zara co-chairs. The coup-led faction, however, did not endorse Zara's running mate Bongbong Marcos for president.
We are in the process of evaluating who among the the candidates, who among the candidates would best continue the programs that this administration has started.
When can we expect your announcement for the presidential candidate?
Siguro in the next, before the campaign, wala pa. Sila lahat pwede.
The Marcos camp says as far as Partido Federal de Pilipinas and the unit team are concerned, PDP Laban's adoption of Duterte Carpio deserves utmost respect. The camp added that no formal agreement has been made between PDP Laban and Lakas CMD and hugpong ng pagbabago for Mayor Zara's adoption. PDP Laban says it will announce its candidate for president before the campaign season begins.
These are the other big stories tonight. Amid the surge in infections, the private sector is pushing for a transition from facility to home-based quarantine for travelers. 5 suspects behind the Mark Nagoyo BDO bank hack have been arrested. And after 155 days, Zara Rutherford has officially become the youngest woman to fly solo around the world. More of these big stories after the break.
Good evening. You're still watching The Big Story. I'm Robbie Alampay.
And I'm Gretchen Ho. Can and should a law be passed to make vaccination mandatory?
Legal experts and lawmakers are weighing in on the no vax, no labas policy in areas under alert level 3 and 4. Mobile journalist Pamela Vasquez has this story.
In a bid to curb the country's COVID infections, the government has implemented policies that restrict the unvaccinated's movement. The no vaccine, no labas rule is currently being imposed in Metro Manila and other areas under alert level 3 and 4. For one, Iloilo City also recently pushed this, as well as the mandatory vaccination to achieve herd immunity.
Hindi kasi ito kagaya ng ibang bagay na pwedeng optional lang eh. May ibang madedehado.
But various groups were quick to oppose this, saying it could deprive individuals the access to basic needs. Lawyers Group Center Law also stressed that only Congress could implement vaccine mandates.
It's in Article 3, the Bill of Rights, Section 6. It provides that neither shall the right to travel be impaired except in the interests of national security, public safety, or public health.
Cavite 4th District Representative P.D. Barzaga earlier said a bill on mandatory vaccination has been filed in Congress last year. However, it hasn't been heard in the committee level. The no vaccine, no ride policy also kicked off earlier this week, only to bring confusion and chaos to commuters. Marikina Mayor Marcy Teodoro told One News the Chiefs that this won't be applied in the city, citing impractical and discriminatory remarks.
Yung iba nasabi sa amin, anti-poor dahil ang nagpa-public transport naman talaga yung mga daily wage earner, yung mga walang sariling sasakyan.
Teodoro added that the policy would be difficult to enforce and monitor. DOLE and DOTR recently clarified that workers are exempted from it after many were left stranded and barred from riding PUVs. Teodoro also said it would make more sense to rather focus on the public's strict compliance on the minimum health standards. Mobile journalist Pamela Vasquez, We Are One News.
While several LGUs make the case for limiting mobility of the unvaccinated, the private sector, on the other hand, is pushing for a shift from facility to home-based quarantine for incoming travelers. Presidential Advisor for Entrepreneurship Joey Concepcion says the entry requirements to the Philippines are, quote, so extensive and complicated for returning overseas Filipinos and foreigners. Current travel entry rules require a negative RT-PCR test taken 48 hours before departure from the country of origin. Meanwhile, passengers from countries under moderate risk are required to stay in a quarantine facility upon arrival until they get a negative test result.
I'm proposing to our IATF members is that a gradual move towards, to me, the removal of quarantine in the Philippines and moving towards home quarantine rather than facility-based quarantine, because my own view is that it has not actually helped us from preventing Delta or Omicron from entering the country.
The Octa Research Group believes the worst may be over for Metro Manila as cases continue its downtrend in the capital, but they advise holding off on easing restrictions for now. Mobile journalist Jacob Lazaro gives us a front seat to the story.
With Metro Manila's COVID numbers on the downtrend, researchers are now more optimistic that the worst may have already passed. Octa Research microbiologist Father Nick Ostriaco says it is now unlikely that a more dangerous COVID variant will emerge after Omicron.
Omicron has significantly constrained the mutational landscape of future variants of concern. Because of Omicron, it is more difficult to make a scarier variant of SARS-CoV-2.
Ostriaco says this is because Omicron's spike protein, or the key that lets the virus into human cells, is already so grossly mutated. Ostriaco says any further mutation of COVID would likely make the spike protein incompatible with human cells and the other variants. Add to this the natural immunity gained by those infected by the Omicron surge and the ongoing vaccination program.
Immunological memory of the entire population is more robust. It is stronger because of this situation. And so I think this is a consensus around the world now that the Omicron makes this flu endemic scenario more likely.
Because of this, Ostriaco said, COVID-19 is likely to become endemic, just like the common flu. Still, Octa says this is no reason to put our guard down.
And I will say it again, it is mild, but it can still kill if you are not vaccinated and if you are not boosted.
Octa mathematician Professor Guida David said, Metro Manila's COVID number are already clearly on a downward trend. The capital region has been having nearly 10,000 new COVID cases per day. David says, barring any major changes, we can expect NCR's number to drop to 2,000 by the end of the month, 1,000 by Valentine's Day, and less than 500 again by the end of February.
To sustain the rapid decrease, I would say that downgrading to alert level at this time might not be advisable until the NCR reaches moderate risk.
Mobile journalist Jacob Lazaro, We Are One News.
For the big story in sports, while the decision to resume the PBA Governors Cup is still up in the air, players say they are confident that the league will resume its games soon. TNT Tropang Liga swingman Gab Banal and Raynor Shine Elasto Painters veteran Gabe Norwood say the PBA already has the experience in handling these types of situations and expects the games to resume as soon as possible. But as they wait, the players say they are already getting ready by training at home and in their cluster formats. The fate of the PBA Governors Cup is set to be decided in a crucial board meeting next week.
Definitely confident about it because they were able to do it last year. So I'm confident that positive things will be said in this meeting.
I like to think, the people making decisions are also doing, not the same by me, but the same hopefully by the players of the league, the fans of the league, and essentially just sports in general here in the country.
Meanwhile, the Philippine Olympic Committee trims down its list of athletes participating in the Hanoi Southeast Asian Games due to budgetary constraints. From an initial 624 athletes, only 587 will be representing Team Philippines. POC says the country's remaining budget of 121 million pesos would not be enough to bankroll the campaign in the biennial meet. POC President Bambol Tolentino says 80 athletes are on the appeals list. 161 officials are set to accompany the athletes in the regional meet. Time for another quick break. When we return, 5 suspects behind the massive online bank fraud last December have been arrested by the NBI. The Philippines stands to get cheaper anti-COVID pills as generic drug manufacturers pledge to make it more affordable for poorer nations. And after 155 days, the 19-year-old solo pilot Zara Rutherford ends her trip around the world.
Good evening. You're still watching The Big Story. I'm Robbie Alampay.
And I'm Gretchen Ho. 5 suspects in the highly controversial BDO Cyber Hacking incident last December were arrested by the NBI.
Authorities are also debunking speculations that a bank employee was involved. Marlene Alcaide has the story.
Back in December, some 700 BDO clients fell prey to a hacking incident, with huge amounts transferred to a certain Mark Nagoyo. Mark Nagoyo, as it turns out, is a group. One of its members, known as alias Alex, surrendered after realizing the extent of the racket.
Hindi ko po kasi ma-attempt po yung mga nababasa ko po sa online po. Nung mga araw po na ginawa ko po yung paggawa ko ng SMS blast po. Hindi ko po kasi po alam na ganun po karami yung mabibiktima po. Kaya po nag-decide po ako na pumunta po mismo sa video. Alam ko po yung pangyayari po sa Mark Nagoyo.
This became the NBI's key to arresting the other involved in the hacking incident, including 2 Nigerian nationals who were nabbed in Pampanga. The 2 were identified as alias Daddy Champ and Peter Nwadi.
Nagtulong-tulong ho in providing the details, and we follow the money trail. It just so happened that we identified one key player in their group who knows or who participates doon sa full process ng scheme. Responsible siya in procuring yung mga fake documents, applying for a bank, and madami siyang role dun sa entire group. That's why we were able to follow yung mga members.
3 more Filipinos were arrested, including alleged mastermind Jerome Taupa, Ronaldin Panaligan, and alias X-Men Clay Revillosa. Alias X-Men admits to providing the group with the database of the victims.
Ang trabaho ko lang po is mag-dump. Ine-extract po ang database. Nakapagbenta ako ng mailis kulang-kulang 800,000 sa mga nag-PPM sa akin.
NBI, for their part, clarifies that none of the hackers colluded with the bank employee. They also said that the agency is currently coordinating with the bank to prevent incidents like this in the future.
Wala talagang internal employees or internal personnel na involved sa banking institution in providing yung mga leads and yung mga depositors' details. Maingat kasi yung mga grupo na yan, sir, and it will be very, very risky on their part.
The 5 suspects were charged for violation of the Cybercrime Prevention Act. They also vowed to cooperate with the NBI for the investigation. For News 5, Marlene Alcaide, we are One News.
Time for next to look at some of the day's big stories. A recent SWS survey shows skepticism towards COVID vaccines continues to wane down. Only 8% of the respondents continue to express vaccine hesitancy. That's from 18% last September. The survey was conducted before the holidays from December 12 to 16. 105 of the world's poorer nations are set to receive cheaper oral anti-COVID pills, including the Philippines. The Global Medicines Patent Pool signed agreements with 27 drug makers to produce a more affordable version of Merck's Molnupiravir. Molnupiravir's creators have waived its royalties for the oral drug to make it more accessible. And Kalinga, Ifugao, Mountain Province, and Northern Samar have all been placed under Alert Level 4 as COVID cases continue to escalate. Under Alert Level 4, cinemas, face-to-face classes, and casinos are restricted from operating. Gatherings in residences with individuals not belonging to the same household are also not allowed. 15 more areas were also placed under Alert Level 3, and the new alert levels will take effect from January 21 to 31.
In world news, top Russian and U.S. diplomats are playing down any prospects of resolving their differences amid soaring tensions in Ukraine. Both U.S. Secretary Antony Blinken and Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov have said they are not expecting breakthroughs in the talks. Washington hopes to reduce tensions over a Russian troop buildup near Ukraine's border. This as Russia has asked NATO not to admit Ukraine as a member. Meanwhile, U.S. President Joe Biden says Russia will pay a heavy price should it show any form of aggression against Ukraine. Biden made it clear that any invasion will be met with severe and coordinated economic response from the U.S. and its allies. Biden says he made this clear with Russian President Vladimir Putin himself.
If any assembled Russian units move across the Ukrainian border, that is an invasion.
History has been made yet again. 19-year-old Zara Rutherford is officially the youngest woman to fly solo around the world.
Rutherford returned to Belgium after flying 51,000 kilometers over 52 nations for 155 days. Cheers and applause went up as Rutherford's plane came to a halt on the tarmac. To meet criteria for a round-the-world flight, Rutherford touched 2 points opposite each other on the globe. This was in Jambi, Indonesia, and Tumaco, Colombia.
Having gained her pilot's license in 2020 and now making history, Rutherford said she now wants to study engineering at an American or British university. The dream for her is to become an astronaut, and she hopes her voyage will encourage women to be in science, technology, and aviation.
It's just really crazy. I haven't quite processed it, I think. I mean, coming here, I was basically in tears, just trying to imagine what it'd be like to finally be home after 5 months. And even this flight wasn't easy, so I'm just super happy.
That's amazing.
Ikaw, ang ginagawa mo sa buhay mo?
Ako nga eh, parang, teka lang, nagpa-parlor ako kanina eh. Hindi, no, sabi nga, kasi katulad ni Zara, I was in the parlor kanina. And I was asking them, kamusta naman kayo? Kasi matagal na ako din nagpa-parlor. Sabi nung naggugupit ng buhok ko, sabi niya, ang galing ng management namin. Walang natanggal sa trabaho. And at the same time, they used that time, the whole pandemic, to get training sessions from London. So, parang katulad ni Zara, she made good use of her time in this pandemic.
Oo, we don't need work records, di ba? Basta ang mahalaga, give people the chance to reach their potentials and to still work for their dreams.
Ikaw, anong gusto mo pagkatapos maging anchor, maging journalist? What's the next dream?
Hindi ko pala, gusto ko lang matulog.
Well, one lesson, keep on dreaming and keep on believing. It's very, very much possible. Salute to all the ladies, especially out there. That wraps up today's big story. Catch us again on Monday, 8 p.m. on Signal Channels 8 and 250.
Please like our Facebook page, One News. For more in-depth analysis, visit our webpage, onenews.ph. Mask on.
Wash hands.
And stay safe, Philippines. I'm Robbie Alampay.
And I'm Gretchen Hall. We are One News. Have a good evening.
Hello, can you hear me?
Apo, sir, malino po.
Okay.
Mag-set up lang po sa studio, then mag-start naman po tayo soon. Standby po.